Okay, wonderful. So we're going to talk here about Bonner Scholar program reporting, and I'm going to ask a couple poll questions to start us off. So the first one is, how long have you been in your position? So you can just click on that screen. Great. So half of you are really just starting, which is good, and the other half will look like you're getting a refresher here today, which is terrific. I'm always curious about this, which is how many of you were Bonner a student before taking your job? Pretty great. Okay, so almost 40%. That's pretty cool. Congratulations. Welcome to this new role, if you're new. And don't take this question the wrong way, but this question really has to do with, have you seen some of the step-by-step guides on Bonner Webbers that are on the wiki? So I'm sort of curious to know who's actually looked at those. Great. It looks like most of you have at least had a chance to 88%. Looks like most of you had a chance to look at those. That'll be helpful because we'll walk through this stuff. I'll certainly have a lot of questions. You have the opportunity to ask questions, but we'll refer you back to those guides as a sort of a more ongoing resource as we move forward. And I'm sort of curious right now is if there's a particular part of the reporting that you most need help with, and you can select more than one. You can select all if you feel like it. So it looked like it's a big emphasis on the semester reporting, change of status kind of stuff, which makes sense. That's in fact the most complicated part. Um, the reimbursement report, that makes sense. That's sort of also can be complicated. And a few of you have questions about some of the other items. I've had a handful of them because we're at the start of the school year. I've had a handful of questions regarding the freshman list. We'll cover some of those this morning. Okay, and let's just get started. So we're going to cover two things here. We're going to cover both the semester reporting in Bonner Webbers, and we're also going to we're going to cover those requests for funding that you send to us through proposals. That's first year service trip, those kinds of things. So, oh, by the way, let me share these results. I forgot to share these. You can see where everybody stands on those. Okay, so go back. So, and the semester reports begin with the freshman report, the new freshman list, and then the registrar's list all the way through. So what I'm going to do, the easiest way to do this ultimately is to walk you through a screen. And I picked Rhodes College. I'm going to be Walt Tennyson during this presentation. I'm not going to try to speak like Walt. Now, the first thing I want you to understand are the funding categories. If you're brand new at this, this is particularly useful, but the way the program has evolved is there's funding for different pieces of the program implementation. And the semester reporting really comes out of these first group of categories. So, and it says first year. I could have split that between first semester and second semester. So the school year support, which is initially was replacing work study, which is so that would be split in half. In the fall, you get half of that, $1,250. In the spring, you get the other half, $1,250. Summer living stipend. Summer living stipend then is, and the summer earnings. So those are for 1 or 2 summers worth. And it doesn't have to be the first summer or the second summer. It could be the second and the third, or the first and the third. And students have access to the Rising Senior Fund, which is that $500 listed in the third year, because that's really that third summer. Students can access that, and we'll go through that a little bit in a minute. Loan reduction, of course, is at the end of their 4 years, and there's some guidelines about what they have to do to be eligible for loan reduction. And the administrative support is just that. That's a fairly modest amount of money, also split between fall and spring. And then the community fund is also split between fall and spring. So these are all per student allocations. I'm going to cover the second half of this, the first year service trip and so forth, in the second half of our presentation, because those are all requested via proposals to us, except for the service exchange. That's actually built into the administrative support in the fall or spring of the for sophomores. So we'll cover that as well. Okay, so this is good. So I'm noticing that I've got a couple questions from people, and please keep those up on the chat category. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to I'm just going to jump to Rhodes College, and I'm logged in as Walt. So my screen looks very similar to what your screens look like. And the first step of this is we're talking about the semester reports. So here, Bonner Scholar program is where all the reporting happens. And this main screen shows you a summary, semester by semester, of all the reports and where they stand. Rhodes has had a turnover in staff, so part of what's going on here is catching up from a staff member who left after SLI, and so that's why the dates why some of these things aren't done. But also means why they're a report for us to look at. So I hope Walt doesn't feel badly that we're using his example. Now, I just want to remind you on Bonner Weber's, on the wiki, I should say, that the guides here under program management, there are tracking and reporting category. If you click on that, all the Bonner Weber's step-by-step guides are here. And we also pulled out separately the Bonner semester reporting right here. And what we're going to cover are these categories, new freshman list all the way through. And these guides are perfect reference for you guys. Little warning about duplicate students, but literally it's step, shows you the screen, step, shows you the screen, all that kind of stuff. So it's very straightforward, and will be a good reference after this webinar for those of you who might have missed a step or two as I go through it. Okay, so we're doing the new freshman list, which is right here, new student list. And I can't remember where they stand on this, so let's take a look. Now, we expect these students to be submitted to us before they're approved, before the students receive an approval letter from you all. And the way to add a student is up here in available actions. Add a prospective student. You'd add them as a Bonner Scholar, be a new freshman, as you see on the screen. You put their estimated family contribution, which is a requirement, the fall when they start, add all their information, including their email address. The email address is what will be required for them to log in. Bonner Weber's will create a password for them. And answer as much of these other questions as you can. Gender will matter to us. Race, ethnicity will matter to us in terms of some of the gender balance and diversity goals we have. And then you hit save. And when you hit save, they will then show up on this list. And they'll show up as prospective. Now these are old, wait for the screen. These are old students. And we don't have an easy way of deleting them. So you're just going to ignore them. But if you had a prospective student there, you'd hit submit. And I'll just submit this one student, Ebony Archie. Should be easy to figure out. She's the one person in the wrong class. And when you've submitted them, they move from the prospective list, which I do not see. So this is a long list that you guys see that I don't see. But they move from that list to the submitted section on the page. And you will then I'll log in. And actually, let me just do that real quick. It'd be useful for you guys to see what I see. I'm going to log off for this account. Log in as myself. And I have the same, I have a few other settings at the top here, but I have the same settings that you have. So I'll get it, I'll go here, I'll look at the new freshman list for fall 2013. And I will only see the submitted. And that's important. So what you would then do is you would then say available actions. Once you've got them in there, you would set available actions. It should refresh and give a little text box for a message in which you can say, Bobby, here's our list of folks, please approve them. It may be a little glitchy because I've logged in twice now on the same school, on the same computer. In any event, I'll go back to that in a second. So I would get this, I would approve the student. Now we're going to take the student and write it right through. I would approve the student, or Walt would approve the student. And you can see up here, it does the math. It shows me all the math that we use as we try to understand who's who in the system. Now, let me log out of this. I may have to start from scratch here because I got confused. All right, here we go. So now it's logged in as me. I'll go back in as Walt. Remember Walt's email. All right, so I log in as Walt. So I'll approve them and I'll send an email back using Bonner-Weber's. Just waiting for it to come up on the screen. There it is. And so where's that class of 2015? So then I get a notification from the Bonner Foundation. And by the way, we use this available actions. So please use this, notify Foundation to review the list. Don't go pull out of here and use your own email program. Let those back and forth emails all come from Bonner-Weber's. That's much easier for me. That email will give me a link directly to this page, which makes it easier. And I get them in batches so I can deal with them all at one time. Anyway, so I've now got the student. Only with approval from the foundation should an email go out to these students that they're accepted, or that they've been accepted into the program. So they've been approved. And then if you heard back from this student that they've accepted, you would hit accept, and they would move down to this part of the list. If they turn out to deny you, they decide to go not to Rhodes but to Barry, then you would hit deny. And of course, this student's not coming, so we'll put them on deny anyway. And that will, as you would guess, bump them down the screen. So there's our long list of perspectives, submitted, approved, accepted, and then finally the denied. And that Ebony Archie's now in the denied. So, so that's how this process works. You can do this on a rolling basis. In other words, you can send one or two at a time on the system. If that's how your selection process is working. You do not have to wait till you have the whole class gathered. It's better to do a rolling basis. And when you enter them, you want to make sure you put that grad year right here. It's the grad year that they're going to graduate from, not the year that we're doing the entries. And as I said, and most of you know, the statistics that matter are up here. Now, this is a rare instance where the male-female was more than 60-40. When you have 15 in a class, it becomes a little tricky because I have one difference, and this will be not 60-40, but even more balanced than that. So that happened once in a blue moon. We have our target for estimated family contribution. The system automatically removes the top 15% of the highest EFCs for the top 15% of students, and it has our non-white percentages. And the goal there is to exceed the school's own diversity level. And as I said before, the goal for the target for male-female would be 60-40. So just so you know, if there was a change of status, if one of these students drops out during the course of the year, we would ask that they replace with a male student to get these percentages back to that 60-40. Are there any questions? If you want to type any questions on this part of it, please do so in the chat. Now, that's the first big step. The second step is the registrar's list. And I'm going to pull up so this is perfect. So the registrar's list for Rhodes has not been created. So the way you would create it is you go to the registrar's tab, as we are here, and at the bottom, it says create the next semester's registrar's list. You cannot create that list, and it's going to take a minute to do it. You'll see this bar. You cannot do it until the prior semester has been locked. That's important information to know. So you can't do the registrar's list until the prior semester's been locked. And what it's doing right now, the reason it's taking a little while, is it's looking at the last enrollment status of each of the students in the system. And it's adding it. So if they're were active last semester, at the end of the semester, they're going to be automatically active in the coming semester. If they were on leave at the end of last semester, they will show up here on leave. If they were awaiting loan reduction, they will be awaiting loan reduction in this new. However, if they were receiving loan reduction in the summer, which is usually the case for graduating seniors, if they were receiving loan reduction in the summer, the system says, well, we know they will become alumni, and the system automatically converts them to alumni. It also takes all the new freshmen that we just listed and all the ones that were accepted and adds them to the list. And again, this takes a few minutes because it's a long process of getting all that data in there. We'll just sit here and wait for that to happen. Actually, while we're sitting here, I want to show you one quick thing here. So I've got a student here. I've got Eric's enrollment information. Well, I'm not going to show you that. What I was going to show you was their enrollment history. It's probably better I show that from a different screen. Okay, so it refreshed. Did it refresh and give it to me? Okay, so there's one reason why this might not have worked. Let me just go show you. We have to set our calendars. So I'm going to go over here and manage settings, and I'm going to go look at my set calendar dates. And we have this school year, the fall, the start of the spring, the start of the summer. But I don't know the end of the summer unless they have the start of next fall. So go to available actions. I go to next year. And if there's glitches in the system, this is one of the primary areas that causes problems. Yeah, sure enough. Oh, no, wait a second. Previous year. Let's go look. Yeah. So fall 14. So let me just show this again. So this school year, 13, 14, 14, is all here. But the system can't really finish this school year unless it has the fall of the coming year, because it doesn't know the end of the summer. The way you get the end of the summer is you go the start of the fall, the day before. So I'll choose roughly April, do 15th. They can fix this later. and hit save. Now I have the end of the summer is August 14th, the day before. So that's how that works, and that's very important. That's why this wasn't working. So I go back to Bonner Scholar Reporting. I go back to Registrar's List. Oh, it did create it. And now that I have those dates in there, it worked. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I call up fall 2013. Double checking all those values. Have our students who are waiting loan reduction, they're a little behind in that. I've got some of these active students who took time off and didn't graduate yet. And I've got all the actives, and then I've gotten all my accepted freshmen. Now, a number of you have been asking me, well, how come they're not active in Bonner Weber? Why can't they begin to log hours? And that's because this list has not been locked. They don't become, they don't change status from accepted to active until this list is locked. And they're waiting for me to approve this return from leave, although it's back in the summer, so that may be something else to look at. So I'm so they can get their students active. I'm going to actually, they don't lock the list. I have to lock the list. So Walt would notify the foundation, Bobby, please lock the fall registrar's list. And I'll get an email, a link to that page, and go in and lock it. And that's how that'll happen. All right. Now, what's that student's name? Franklin Dakin. So if you want to do a change, if you have this unlocked and you want to look at the list and say, wait a second, some of these guys, their status needs to be changed. So you go to available actions and you choose change of status right here. The other option, when you have a registrar's list that's unlocked, is you can find them on the list and just click change of status. Either one works. If you choose the top menu, hold on a second. If you choose the top menu, you actually get a pull down menu where you select the student and you walk through the process that way. Here we go. So here's the student, and you could walk through it that way. But you just do the change of status here, and then you go to activate the change of status, and well, you do that, and then to make sure I see it, I don't see a change of status when just because you've done it. I need to have you open the fall list, and then use the available actions and notify the Bonner Foundation to make that change or to approve the changes. Let me just walk over here for a second. Submitted replacements, it means change of status. And you go to the list, you go change of status. This has the names blocked out. That's why I'm using it. You'll get this pull down menu, you'll choose the student, you choose the status change, you'll connect to this is how you choose the students and the type of status. It's a two-step process. Then I've chosen the student there, I've chosen their status. Then you get this form, and if they're taking a leave, you can give the effective date, when you think they'll return, explanation of what's going on. If they're withdrawn from the program, same thing, why they're leaving. You ought to be looking at how much money they still need to be reimbursed, or if they haven't used. The weight loan reduction, you just do the semester that they're effective. And then receiving loan reduction, the same thing. So those are the categories for change of status. And you'll open up the registrar's list for that semester, you go to available actions, and you'll do one after the other and get the whole list so it's accurate. Then you'll notify me. You'll clean it all up. You'll get all these things sitting here waiting. There'll be a whole list of them in the fall usually, because certainly the summer there's a long list. And then you go available actions, notify foundation to review the list. So that's the semester registrar's list, and that's change of status. The next thing I want to show you is allocation report. And for the fall and the spring, the system fills in the entire report. So let's just go look at this report. It'll fill in this entire report. This is locked, but it'll be unlocked. So when I lock the registrar's list, when I lock this list, the system automatically generates this report. And for the fall and spring, it fills it all in. All these categories. And remember, those categories are the same as the ones here. It's just these numbers in half that I'm showing you here. If there's a student receiving loan reduction, it'll automatically put in $2,000 of loan reduction. And some cases that might be an incorrect figure. And there's some policies around full completion of the program that qualifies them for the full loan reduction. But you'll look at that. I'll tend to email you saying, can you look at the allocation report in the fall or spring and tell me if it's okay? Now, in the summer, and I believe their summer list isn't totally complete, hasn't been approved. In the summer, the system will put in the loan reductions, but we won't know. It doesn't know who's receiving what money for the summer. So you have to manually put in summer living and summer earnings and junior bonus. Summer living and summer earnings are based on proposals to you from the students. I don't need to see those. And they are based on the understanding that the students are eligible for 2 full summers of funding. And unused money from one summer, if they do the summer service, can be used in the following summer. So Lucy K. Summerall in this summer must have done her summer service in a prior year and gotten her $1,500, but then wanted to use this additional funding for this year. And so forth. In some cases, they don't need that. They access some additional here. So I'll review this. You'll notify me again. Bobby, please review this. I'll look at it, ask any questions that I might have, make sure it's correct, and then we'll lock it. Once we lock it, the Bonafide, Elaine Wheeler on my staff will generate a letter and a copy of this, a printable copy. This is how that looks. As a PDF attachment, and that will accompany a letter to you and also to the controller saying you may now withdraw from the endowment this total number. And we know this number is made up of these specific numbers. So that part's pretty straightforward. It is important for you to have your budgets for the students all set up and organized in terms of their access. It's important to keep track of whether they received summer funding in a past year. So that you're not giving them 3 summers worth of funding. If they're applying for the junior bonus, then we want you to make sure you've sent me a copy of their request. And usually I like those in batches. So send me all 5 or 7 or whatever the number is. And I'll show you in a minute where those RFPs are. So that's the allocation. Happens every semester. The reimbursement then, now we haven't allocated these summer funds, but if we've allocated these spring funds, and so they looked at their, and nothing changed. In other words, there was no student who dropped out, no student who was didn't get part of a paycheck or allocation payment because they hadn't done their hours or something like that. So in their case, in this form, if it was unlocked, and I'll unlock it here I can't unlock it because it's, but if it was unlocked, this top number is automatically filled in. It carries over from the allocation. The bottom number is filled in with the same figure, and but you can edit that, and that allows you to reduce either to 0 or to a smaller number if there was some reason why that wasn't actually what they received. or earned if it was summer allocation. And once you hit save with those changes, the balances then will show up here, what needs to be reimbursed. In some instances, a student should have received the allocation but didn't. You work with me to get them on the list, and then there'll be a 0 up here, and this will be a positive number, in which case the balance will be negative. In other words, there won't be a reimbursement from you to us, but an additional allocation back to you, back to the school. So that's reimbursement. We want these to happen pretty quickly at the beginning of each semester. So when you're doing the registrar's list and the allocation reports with me, it's also very helpful if you go ahead and try to do the reimbursement report at that same time. So in other words, we're doing registrars for fall. Let's get our summer reimbursement organized at that point. Do those all at the same time. Obviously, with allocation reimbursements, you need to have a good working relationship with your business office. All of you have schools have been in the program for a long time. So the only issue there will be a situation where someone in that office left, and now it's time to educate the new person about the process and procedures. I am very happy to be on a phone call. I do this regularly to help explain some of these categories and the actual process. The controller's office is also the one doing the endowment reporting to the foundation. So that's another reason why it might be useful if you have new staff in those roles to involve me in a conversation. If you're new, and it looks like a bunch of you are, then you want to take the time to go over and meet those folks face to face, sit down and have them explain to you their side of it and your communication process back and forth. That's really important because, as you can see with these lists, those are a lot of individual students to keep track of their payments and allocations from the school to the student. And there happen to be no withdrawals this semester or mid-semester go on leave. But when those do happen, if you look at the history of here, they've been pretty consistent here. Look at some other schools, there's a bunch of students dropped out or something happened, and you'll get these kind of numbers here. Let me just show you this semester. So if there's nothing there, there's the allocation, but this student didn't receive it. These students should have gotten their, or they used that semester to get their summer funding. A little bit messed up in this case, and that's why those numbers are negative there. Okay, that is the new freshman registrar's allocation reimbursement. That's a regular every semester process. In the fall, spring, and summer, well, in the fall and spring, money's allocated from the community fund. And here's a situation where we would, the money gets allocated. Here's the 3,000. And just so you can see that, this is fall 2012, community fund, this column here, there's the 3,000. So the system automatically moves those funds over, and they are then added to the additional, the prior stuff. And the way this works here is available funds, add new community fund expense. You put the date, the amount. We want you to select community fund. Is it a community program? You're just donating to an organization. Is it a student program? In other words, a student is proposed to do something and they're getting support for, they teach a class on painting and they want some funding for equipment or supplies or something of that nature. And then if training, is it actually paying for a student to get trained on something outside of the regular Bonner stuff? So you may send them to a conference, that kind of stuff. Those are all the kind of categories. You label it, you describe it, and then we have our community fund. And then that will then get added to the community fund report. And it does all the math for us. And so let's just try to find an old one. So you can see it looks like this. You get into the categories, we get the categories broken out. Sort of interesting to see how it breaks out in terms of percentages. Under here, you can actually show descriptions. So when you type that paragraph, you can actually look at this sheet and see all the descriptions. this is a good sheet to bring to the business office to verify the numbers. So you bring this sheet over to them and say, this is what we requested, this is what we know checks were written for. Let's double check our opening balance, our total expenses, and our closing. We want that to be kept up to date across, and this is an area where the little catch up is needed at Rhodes, but that's something that I'm working with a number of schools across the network to make sure the community fund is up to date. Now let me just, on the note of community fund, let me just tap over here to the Bonner Wiki. All of you, but particularly the new folks, but literally everybody should have a copy and be sort of very familiar with the Bonner rules. So again, under Bonner Program Management, we have the Bonner Program rules right here. And it's the first link. And we want you to know these rules cold and reference these as you run things. So if you look under finances, there's different aspects of the allocation categories and so forth. And then there's the one on the community fund. This is important because it both explains how the students are allocated, how the money's allocated, but also says a committee of Bonner Scholars should be established to review student proposals for access to the fund. And let me make this a little wider. Accessing community funds. And so one of the things I'm doing this fall is I'm going to be checking with everybody to make sure that that committee is in place. They will, you will still retain, the Bonner directors will still have final approval for the community fund proposals. But these are meant to be student-initiated requests. These community funds are not to be used for, let me just go down here. They can, appropriate uses, startup expenses for Bonner Design Project, purchasing books or other supplies for students, Bonners are tutoring, paying summer camp tuition for students tutored by Bonners, various training, including travel registration for conferences and workshops. We don't want that to be more than 25% of the total because that could eat up the whole pot. Inappropriate uses is the donations to agencies where Bonners or other students are not directly involved. In other words, we don't want you to use checks to write a check to some event that happened someplace that you're not engaged in. Part of the reason for that is the goal here is to have students really connect their philanthropy, which is sort of this kind of fund, to their actual service work. Travel expenses to and from service sites. The school's meant to cover that. Supplement to summer living. The schools, that comes from other sources in Bonner, not the community fund. Money for the Bonner meetings. That's not supposed to come from here. Any kind of awards program. General administration of the Bonner program. Travel, printing. So this is not to run the Bonner program. This is to fund the Bonner student service activities or to support agencies where the students are engaged. And one key thing is when a student drops out, we don't reimburse this money. Once it's allocated, we want it to stay in the community fund. So this is something that we're going to be reviewing this fall to make sure people are on point with this. Both the balances are up to date and the allocations are fitting our criteria. All right, I'm gonna unmute this real quick, and I'm sort of curious to know if anybody wants to ask any questions verbally if they don't want to chat on them. Does anybody have any questions you want to ask right now? No. All right, fair enough. If you want to use the chat down at the bottom, I think that's the best way. Okay, so we've covered the basics of the Bonner allocation. We've covered just a brief order: the freshman list, the semester list, and the change of status, allocation reimbursement, and the community fund. And we've seen that there's both the Bonner rules are very important for people to know what the Bonner rules are, the Bonner guidelines and rules. And this whole page, you want to be able to, you may even want to print it out. And then we have these guides to using Bonner Webers overall. And then at the bottom of this, we also have the Bonner semester, all the reporting we're looking at right here. So those are the two major resources that ought to be referenced regularly as you do this. It does take a couple semesters doing this a couple times at least to begin to be familiar with it. The big thing I think for you all is to mark on your calendars when you ought to be doing these reports so that you're reminded to do them on a timely basis. The more time that passes that you have to reconstruct, particularly things like community fund or reimbursements, the more trouble you have. I will make an effort, probably will do that in the next week or so, to remind folks about overdue reports. But it's easy enough to find because if you just go to this Bonner Scholar overview page right here, you can see the full list of what's active and what's been locked and closed out. Do not rely on these numbers here. These numbers get added the first time. If there's further adjustments, these don't tend to always adjust. That would take too much programming overhead, if you will, in terms of the system. So these numbers get inputted early, and then they don't. These numbers aren't necessarily reliable after that. Okay, I would like to next and sort of conclude with just a reminder about these requests for funding. Again, these are different pots of money that are available to schools. I'm going to cover these. Well, let me take it. This is not actually accurate. Let me look at it here. We have the first year trip. We have local summer service. We have I'm going to explain the sophomore. I already explained the sophomore exchange. That shows up in the semester allocation. And we have Rising Senior Fund, which also shows up in the semester allocation, but needs to be requested. And then we have the Junior Senior Leadership Fund, which I want to explain as well. So going back to the money for a second, the first year service trip is allocated per student of $250. And we also fund 2 staff. So there's funding for 2 staff to go. If you have 3 staff go, there's really only funding for 2 of them, but also at $250. And what you do is I'll just show you how to get here one more time. You go to the Bonner Scholar Program Management. You go to the Bonner Program Rules. And right here, we even put the RFPs. So I'll show this first one, the first year service trip. So there's the guidelines. Description of the trip, the itinerary and dates, the service activity, the mission, who you're going to be working with, what kind of preparation you might have done, and the proposed budget. And I like to have it on a separate page. It's a little easier for me to do the approvals that way, and the approval letter back to you all. But that's what's required. We used to ask if you were able to take somebody else with you. We no longer do that, but it's $250 per student. So the proposals are pretty straightforward. They can be a page. Sometimes they're a couple pages long, 2 or 3 pages long. It's nice to see the itinerary. And then the budget shows what you're going to be doing. The cost in these categories: travel, room, board, other expenses. And then you also show how many people are going. So we have 14 students and 2 staff. So that's 16, and 16 times 250 is the amount that's available from this fund. The trip may cost a little bit more, in which case your other parts of your budget have to cover that, or it may cost a little less, in which case you don't need to ask for the full amount that you're eligible for. But we expect to get this proposal roughly 6 weeks prior to the trip. And the reason for that is we want to be able to process the letter. We also want to be able to talk to you about any adjustments you might want to make. The first year service trip, I think, is standard enough now across the schools and been a very successful part of the program that I think people have a pretty well organized and process for doing them, and often go back to some of the same places repeatedly, which also helps make it an easier thing to organize. So again, we expect a proposal from you before the trip, and then we'd like to have some kind of report on it, maybe as part of your annual report. And we're going to forget the July 1st. We're going to change those dates to a little earlier this in the coming year. But We like to get sort of some update on how it went. You even could send photographs or something like that. That would be nice. The second category here is local summer service. And here, it's $75 per student that's enrolled that school year. So if you're a school with 60 students and you have $75, that becomes your local summer service fund. And the local summer service RFP gives you some of the categories, how much can how much can be used. So it's, again, if it's $75, you have 60 students enrolled, it'd be $4,500, and then it gives you, kind of basically what are people going to be doing, and are there some connections to the school year, the year-round stuff, preparing for the coming school year. So schools have used these funds to help provide additional funding for the senior interns to stay on campus. They've sometimes they have 7 or 8 students staying local, and they take the $4,500 and they divide them equally among those students. We're sort of saying the maximum one student can receive from the fund is $1,500. So there's some guidance of that. And again, a budget and how you calculated it should be shown. And again, the amount available is the number of students you have enrolled times 75. It's a little surprising how many schools have not taken advantage of local summer service, even when they have students staying local. So that's something we want people to look at if you haven't done it much in the past. Okay, so the next category I'm going to talk about is the Rising Senior Fund. Now, this category is built into the semester reports, the allocation reports, as we saw earlier. But we're asking Rising Senior Bonners to apply for an additional $500 to support their summer service activities or a service-related activity during the senior year. Those could include going to a conference related to a service career they might want to participate in, or some other issue that they're engaged in. And most of the students are using this for additional funding for the summer. But what we ask them to do is write a simple application where they answer the questions: what's your prior summer service? What is your proposed activity? And how is it developmental? What are you use the money for? And then finally, here's your connection to career and academic. So this form's been updated from some prior ones. This cover sheet can be printed out and used by you to have the students submit it to you. We don't have this built into Bonner Weber's yet in terms of an application process. We're looking to do that. But until then, what we urge you to do is have the students type it up. Ideally, the easiest thing for us would be to type them up in a Word document, and then you do a cover sheet. You have the signed copy of these, and then you can email them to us. People also have been printing these out and faxing them to us, or scanning them and sending them to us, which is also easy for us to deal with. I review them and send you an email back saying they're approved, or if I have questions, and then I'll remind you to make sure you put those $500 yourself in. It's called junior bonus. That's the same as senior, rising senior. We have to change this language, but you put them in here. So if this student really was going to get $500, you put it right there. I'll ask you to make sure that gets in there. A little hard for me to keep track of, but they only can put it in there if I've approved the proposal, and I want to ideally approve those before the summer begins. Although it has happened where a student's out there in the summer and goes through the process and we get it late. Maybe it shows up in the reimbursement report as opposed to the allocation report. But the strong preference is to have this stuff happen early. Yes. Lori Chandler asked the question: is this the same Rising Senior, the same as the junior bonus? And the answer is yes. I'm meeting with the programmer today. We're going to try to get that fixed so the terminology is the same. I'm not sure how we ever got junior bonus, but there you have it. So yes, the Rising Senior and the junior bonus are the same category of funding. You do not fold it into summer living or summer earnings. It's its own distinct category. Even if it's used as summer living expenses, we want it to stand alone separately, because we use these two columns to look at how much people have used in the past in those two categories. Okay, so the last thing I want to cover here is this Junior Senior Leadership Fund. And what I want to show you first of all is how it comes about. So if you look at this per student, all these categories, you just sort of think about them all the way across the board. Well, you may not have all your students use these funds. So if you're a school with 40 Bonners, and all 40 Bonners in a given year or in their time use all the funds, then 40 in a given year, the budget is 40 times 5,000 or $200,000. But what if a student drops out? Or what if the replacement student, wasn't replaced right away? Or what if you didn't use all your first year service trip funds? Or what if you didn't ask for your Bonner Congress travel reimbursement? Which, by the way, all you have to do is send us an email with that request. Maybe scan some of the receipts or something, but that can be a very low-key process. But what if you didn't ask for all those funds back? What if you didn't ask for local summer service? We budgeted out of the endowment $200,000 if you're a school with 40, but you haven't used it all. So we created a system where we looked at what wasn't used last year. So right now I'm about to do this. I'll hopefully get it done sort of Monday or Tuesday. I'm going to be looking at all of last year's allocations and reimbursements and figuring out what wasn't used. And to give you an example, on the screen I'm showing you one of the schools that has 60 students, 15 a class. This happens to be 2 years ago, but nevertheless, in 2011-12, they didn't access any local summer service. So the balance is $4,500. Rise and Senior Fund, they had $5,000 of access, but they could have had $7,500. There's $2,500 unused. First Year Service Trip, they went a little over and we approved it because it was just a little bit over. Congress Travel, they went a little over and we approved it because it was just a little bit over, and they obviously have an outstanding balance. They had 59 of their 60 students, so they didn't in the fall. So there was $12,500 of just the school year support that's available, was budgeted, not used. In the spring, because of some extra dropouts, they had four students total who weren't accessing it. So 4 times $1,250 is $5,000. So this particular school didn't use $12,687. So there's two ways to handle this. One is to have that money stay in the endowment. Stay in the endowment or get reimbursed in the endowment. But the other way to do it is to say, look, the long-term projections were every year we would, in this case, access for 60 students $300,000, and we should have access to that. So what we did is we created a Junior Senior Leadership Fund. This $12,000 unspent, in this case, in 11-12, would be available in the following year. So this particular school had $12,687 available for Junior Senior Leadership in 12-13, because this money wasn't used in the prior year, 11-12. And what can these monies be used for? I'll pull up the RFP right here. So they can be used for efforts to enhance your service efforts. So we've had different things in the past, so some of them are itemized here. Issue to Impact, Change Campaign. They could be used for community-based, well, let me back up. Other ways to enhance the program, a junior senior class project. They could be used for community-based learning, the policy options. They could be used for part of the category here. People have been using these funds to pay the expenses to participate in the High Impact Initiative, where there's travel and room and board costs for the summer gathering. You can use it for service trips, but not the first year trip. You can use it for helping students do some of these targeted national internships with Bonner or the Shepherd program, if that's a resource. I want to say that historically, we've had a lot of folks funding international service trips, and we've been pushing people to do more program enhancement, either the particular service initiatives, the overall campus program, the high impact initiative, those kinds of things. Things that will, new initiatives that will be in place over a longer period of time. We've been encouraging that kind of use over time. And it is the case that these kinds of things can be more individually focused. Now, the one thing I want to say here is that the Junior Senior Leadership Fund is not a fund where you go to the students and say, juniors and seniors, hey, what do you want to use this money for? That's the purpose of the community fund. The Junior Senior Leadership Fund is for you all to say, what do we need to do to strengthen service on our campus, either the Bonner program or other things on campus? Or what are some pretty big, important signature activities that we could participate in? So yes, it can include a service trip. Yes, you can help supplement some student summer internships. But we really want to encourage you to look more at these other areas. One person asked, is it ideal to create programs or a campus initiative versus giving it to students? And as I'm trying to emphasize, it's our preference that you do it more towards initiatives that are kind of infrastructure, working with faculty, building new partnerships, more than for individual students' activity. There's enough other funds for individual student activity. For instance, I would rather have you make sure you can participate in the high impact initiative than fund a very expensive international trip for a week for a group of Bonners. So that it may be transformative for those Bonners, but from the campus infrastructure standpoint, high impact would probably have a larger impact and ultimately larger impact on more people. So that's kind of the balance. Something that what I urge you to do here is to reach out to me as you're in the thinking stage. I'm involved in some conversations right now with schools as they look ahead to the school year. But next week, I'll be sending you the amount available that was unused last year, available this year in the Junior Senior Leadership Fund. And I'm looking forward to having you guys get in touch with me. One other question was asked was, can the community fund help offset costs for individuals doing service abroad? The answer is that let me just go look at the Bonner rules and see how it's phrased here. It can be used for student service. Let me go to the finances. Let me go down to the community fund. So it can be summer camps, training-related expenses. We don't really want it to be used the community fund to be used as a fund for individual students to go do service abroad. That would have to be a request to me personally, sort of on an exception basis. It has happened occasionally, but it's not really the preference. It's more of these kind of grant proposals, program initiative kind of things that are, or some of this training related stuff for students. All right, junior, senior can be used for students studying abroad or doing service abroad. So that's the difference. Community fund is different from junior, senior fund in that regard. So junior, senior fund can be used for individuals doing service abroad. That's fine. We don't want it to be the only thing it's used for, but it actually it's fine for that to happen. All right, guys, I've gotten a couple questions here. I think I've answered them as they've come in. Let me just double check. Yes, I think we're in good shape on questions. I hope this has been helpful. We'll post this webinar if somebody else on your staff needs to look at it. I do want everybody who is involved with Bonner reporting, even if they don't manage it directly or sort of do the work, to have good familiarity with the Bonner rules in these categories and good familiarity with the process. So if you're the director of the center, I'd like to have you be familiar with this. So if you're another staff person, but you know you're somebody else in the office ought to at least be familiar, have them watch this video and I think go and take a quick look at the rules and the step-by-step guides. I appreciate your patience, and I look forward to hearing from you. And as always, don't hesitate to give us a call directly to solve any problems or answer any questions. Thanks, everybody.